so this is kind of the other thing that I end up asking all the time is how do you not just become a photographer, but how do you make it your job? How do you monetize that? And how do you start being like, okay, like this is work. How do I make the work still really enjoyable for myself?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, I guess. And I don't know if there's like a one size fits all answer. I'm still navigating it. I don't have it made in the shade. It's still once or twice a week, get somebody offering to pay me $10 for a photo of chapstick or something. And it's like, how is
Or I
anyone going to
saw
say
the
yes to
send
this
you a
gig?
tripod. We'll send you a tripod and send a bunch of pictures to them. And you're like, that's not free. Like, that's not free.
Yeah. And it's like a $25 tripod. I wish you could see the room I'm in and how many tripods are like right on the other side of my computer. Cause it's like, honestly, at this point, you have to pay me to take a tripod. Cause if I have another one, I don't know where to put it.
Right.
Like, even if you don't want photos, you just have to pay me for like storage fee to have the stupid
Right.
tripod.
Right.
um, I think, you know, the way that I got to like do what I like to do, because every photographer goes down this path where you want to be like a nature photographer, but somebody wants you to take senior photos or like shoot their
Right.
wedding or graduation photos. And it's so hard to say no to because you'll get an offer from an outdoor brand that's like, we'll pay you $50 for a 3-day hiking trip. And you're like, okay. And then some, person's like, I'll pay you $4,000 to work Saturday. And you're like, oh shit, that sounds awesome.
Right.
And so it's really tough to say no to that stuff. And a lot of photographers get sucked down this hole of becoming wedding photographers on accident or portrait photographers on accident just because it pays the bills. And I think it's just kind of has to be like a drive. You have to just, accept those gigs for sure. If you need the money, there's like absolutely no shame in that. And obviously a lot of people love shooting that stuff. But if your goal is to be like an outdoor industry photographer, you have to just constantly be pushing. I'm still constantly sending pitch emails, coming up with ideas, making decks, sending it out to brands. It's just like, it's a never ending, I don't want to say battle, but it's just part of the gig. You're not always taking photos and publishing things. I'd say at least 50% of it has to be outreach and planning and finding your next client.
Yeah. And actually like kind of focusing on the business aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. And, it always helps to have like cool projects in mind, not, you can't just email like Osprey backpacks, like, hello, do you need backpack photo? Because
Yeah.
how many of those do you think they get per week?
Yeah.
But if you have a cool idea and you're like, hey, I'm gonna, backpack all the way across the state of Montana, they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And
Yeah.
just come up with cool ways to set yourself apart.
Yeah. And I imagine that once you start to get a few of those gigs that are really cool and you start to build your name off of like the type of work that you've done, it becomes easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That helps a ton. I was really fortunate. Sierra Designs was the first company that trusted me.
Yeah.
And they just like, I had no clients on my repertoire. I sent them a couple photos I took for fun and they liked them and they hired me. And they didn't pay me very much, but I didn't deserve to be paid very much at that point. And yeah, the second I was able to say Sierra Designs was a paying client, that like launched everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for sure. Like that's actually like, it's funny. I talk about this fairly often, but in the beginning, we signed Fisher Skis as our like first real paid client, I guess, if we're calling them that, or sponsor. And it wasn't for very much money. Like it was like, I forget what it was. It was like $1,500 to $2,000 a year, something like that. Like it was minuscule money, like barely to the point where you're getting paid for the amount of work that we were doing. But what it allowed me to do was put that Fisher Skis was a paying sponsor, and then you can sell on everybody else. And that's kind of been like when people ask me how to make money doing this, it's like, well, that's kind of it. It's like you kind of got to eat a little bit of shit and knock yourself down from a pedestal and be like, all right, this is where I'm at right now. How can I leverage what this brand is giving me?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, good for you for still sticking with them and not like taking that and immediately going to DPS and trying to add a zero.
Well,
on
now
it or
they're
something.
paying me. Like now they're paying me.
Yeah.
They're like taking care of me. So I'm like, now it's a different story. If DPS offered me like double the money, I'll talk to DPS still, I am not against like but that's the thing is you should have the conversation with everybody. Like nobody should pigeonhole themselves for any reason.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a balance, right? My number one sponsor is Sony and I genuinely love their equipment. And like, it's not a crazy amount of money, but it opens so many doors because they're like the biggest electronics company in the world. So just I have a business card that says Sony on it and that's insane. So it like
that's insane.
the You know, like if Nikon or Canon wanted to steal me as an ambassador, they would have to write an enormous check, like way more than Sony's ever paid me, just because I actually love the brand. I'm like
For
happy to
sure.
support it.
For sure.
And
There's
so
definitely value and loyalty to a brand. And I think that
yeah,
speaks to who you are, whether it's a podcaster, a photographer, or an athlete, like showing loyalty to a brand, if, you know, taking a pay cut to stay with a brand you really feel is important.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm for sale. If those diet teas want to sponsor me, I'll no, I'm just kidding.